Brazilian feminist movements gather in the rally Marcha das Margaridas as the rally celebrates 23 years of its first edition, accompanied this time by President Lula. Myanmar authorities say rescuers have recovered 33 bodies after a landslide at a jade mine in the northern region. And the Ministry of Defense of Niger confirmed that 17 members of its armed forces were killed in a terrorist attack. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Brazilian President Luis Inácio Lula da Silva participates in the Marcha das Margaridas, a feminist demonstration that celebrates 23 years since its first rally. In Brazil, the head of state and more than 100,000 women gathered for the 7th Marcha das Margaridas. People seek to democratize the access to land, advocate for the protection of nature with environmental and climate justice, and public education. The event is coordinated by the National Confederation of Agricultural Workers, federations and affiliated unions. Delegations from 35 countries, ministers and representatives of official banks took part in the opening ceremony. In Brazil, the leader of the landless rural workers movement, João Pedro Stedley, appeared before the Parliamentary Commission of Inquiry in the Chamber of Deputies, where he defended the struggle for agrarian reform and lashed out against the most conservative agribusiness sectors in his country. The social leader and economist appeared before the collegiate court on Tuesday after being summoned as a witness in the investigation opened by the Bolsonarist right wing, which seeks to prosecute the actions of the movement. In his statement, Stedley defended the popular struggle for agrarian reform and lashed out against the conservative agribusiness sector, which only seeks to increase its profits. He also emphasized the collective sense, the division of tasks, and the intellectual formation of the movement's militants, and thanked for the solidarity received from different parts of the continent.
There is a concept in the penal code, which is in the jurisprudence of the Supreme Court of Justice: invasion of land or any public property. And when someone does this for their own benefit, it is characterized as squatting, and it is criminalized by the penal code. With regard to this action, I repeat that here in Brazil, it is common for people with money to invade indigenous land, quilombola land, and public land. That's invasion. Now, what our movement is doing, recognized by case law, is not invasion, but occupation. And occupation here is not squatting. I'm not the one saying that. It is the case law of the Superior Court of Justice. Because the families who go there to occupy an area, wherever it may be, are not going there for their own benefit. They go there to protest, to draw the government's attention, so that the government applies the law.
The Landless Workers Movement of Brazil, or MST, is one of the largest social movements in the continent. For 40 years, it has been fighting for the implementation of agrarian reform and public policies to meet the concrete needs of landless families suffering from the concentration of private property. With its camps, cooperatives, and schools, the movement manages the economic, social, and cultural life of the farmers and contributes to the production of healthy food for the Brazilian and Latin American people through its links with other social movements in the world. The Parliamentary Commission of Inquiry on MST is a process of investigation carried out by the legislative branch at the request of parliamentarians of the Bolsonarist extreme right on the social movement without a specific reason. This way, the sector linked to agribusiness and landowners seeks to criminalize the social struggle for agrarian reform and in defense of the environment. On Tuesday, the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights reported a 19% reduction of murders of social leaders in Colombia. The head of the UN office in Colombia, Juliette de Rivero, issued the report on Tuesday, acknowledging the positive impact of the policies implemented by the administration of Gustavo Petro in the matter. The document analyzes the situation of the reforms of the government between January 1st and June 20th of the current year. Alongside of representatives of the executive, foreign governments, and social and political leaders, De Rivero focused on the security guarantee policies of the government, but also addressed the increase in massacres and targeted defenders victims of violence. The United Nations Office for Human Rights in Colombia has positively recognized the progress and commitments of the Colombian government in this area.
Today I present an analysis of human rights situation of the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights in Colombia. On the one hand, this office celebrates the human rights approach of this government. It opens to the human rights approach and is committed to the guarantee of human rights, which has resulted in several important reforms and positive impacts. The office has observed a 19% decrease in the number of verified cases of homicide of human rights defenders compared to the previous semester from July to December 2022. This is positive, but the number of defenders murdered in Colombia continues to be absolutely intolerable. 29 men, 7 women, 11 indigenous, 9 Aphrodisians, and 15 peasants.
Let's take now a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. All the stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back from the south. On Wednesday, Myanmar authorities said rescuers have recovered 33 bodies after a landslide at a jade mine in the northern region. On Sunday, over 35 miners were washed away by a mudslide in Pakant, prompting a search and rescue operation using over 150 boats. Landslides occur several times a year in Pakant's jade mines. In July 2020, at least 162 people died in a landslide in the same area, and 113 were killed in November 2015. Most victims are independent miners who settle near giant mounds of discarded earth excavated by heavy machinery used by mining companies. Most scavengers are unregistered migrants from other areas, making it hard to determine exactly how many people are missing after such accidents. In the United States, Hawaii local authorities have raised to 106 the number of people who have died in the fires on the island of Maui, while hundreds of people are still missing. The data have been updated by the Maui Police Department, where several fires have devastated part of the island during the last week, and where the U.S. government has moved a forensic team to strengthen and advance in the work of identifying the victims caused by the fire. The official death toll, according to the latest count by local authorities, has risen to 106, but it is likely that the figure will increase as search and rescue tasks continue. U.S. President Joe Biden announced Tuesday that he will travel to Hawaii as soon as possible to assess the damage caused by the fires on the island of Maui. "25 countries that are home to a quarter of the world's population are facing extreme water stress, according to new research by the World Resources Institute. The report suggests that these countries regularly use 80% of their water reserves each year. The Institute's Aqueduct Water Risk Map reveals that water demand is increasing around the world and has more than doubled since 1960. The study found that while water demand has stabilized in Europe and the US, it is soaring in Africa, and that by 2050, worldwide demand is projected to increase by 20 to 25%. Among the 25 most water-stressed countries are Saudi Arabia, Chile, San Marino, Belgium, and Greece. The 5 most water-stressed are Bahrain, Cyprus, Kuwait, Lebanon, and Oman. The armed forces of Ukraine have attacked the village of Kurshanovichy, located in the Russian province of Bryansk. On Wednesday, the provincial governor, Alexander Bogomas, informed that there were no fatalities nor wounded after the attack. Bogomas confirmed damage to the structures of 5 residential buildings, a school, and an entertainment venue. Bryansk is located 380 kilometers southwest of Moscow, Russia's capital city. Pyongyang government on Wednesday made a statement on the presence in the country of the U.S. military soldier who crossed into its territory. The KCNA news agency said that during the investigation, the U.S. citizen Travis King confessed that he had decided to come to the North Korean People's Republic because he resented the inhuman mistreatment and racial discrimination within the U.S. military. In the sense, he also expressed his willingness to seek refuge in a North Korean nation or a third country, claiming that he was disappointed with the inequality of U.S. society. On the other hand, the United States claimed that the soldier had an irregular disciplinary record and would face disciplinary action in the United States after having an altercation with the police and being detained in a jail in South Korea. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English. There you will be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the south. On Wednesday, the Ministry of Defense of Niger confirmed that 17 members of its armed forces were killed in a terrorist attack. On Tuesday, the event occurred in the region of Tilaberi, in the west of the nation, at around 1:30 p.m. local time. The military office also reported that 20 other soldiers were wounded. The report noted that the quick reaction of the air and ground forces mitigated the severity of the terrorist assault, estimating that at least 100 of the attackers have been neutralized. The authorities have indicated that the death toll is provisional, since among the 20 or so wounded, there are 6 who are in serious condition. On Tuesday, the struggle in Sudan entered its 4th month and thousands of people have died. Since Sudan's conflict erupted on April 15, the country has been plunged into a dire humanitarian crisis. In a joint appeal, the heads of 20 global organizations pointed out that more than 6 million Sudanese people are one step away from famine and that the situation is spiraling out of control. In addition, they added that more than 14 million children need humanitarian aid and over 4 million people have fled the fighting, either within the war-ravaged country or as refugees to neighboring states. Meanwhile, the country has seen increasing risk of large-scale outbreaks of infectious diseases such as malaria, dengue fever, and cholera. On Wednesday, the United Nations Stabilization Mission in Mali denounced an attack against one of its convoys. According to the UN officials, one of its convoys was violently attacked in Menaka, in the northeast of the nation. The multi-dimensional integrated stabilization mission, known as MINUSMA, said there was no damage or fatalities, only 2 soldiers lightly wounded, and rejected the violent actions, stressing that acts like these can constitute a war crime. The attacks come in the midst of high tension in the region, with threats of military interventions and other aggressive movements. Several Palestinians were injured on Wednesday when Israeli occupation forces stormed the Balata refugee camp east of Nablus in the West Bank. Wafa news agency denounced that occupation forces closed the entrances to the camp and raided in large numbers among shots and poison gas bombs, injuring 10 Palestinians and also leaving more than 80 people suffer from tear gas inhalation. Earlier, Israeli soldiers fired tear gas canisters at locals in the eastern part of the city, where they were providing cover for Israeli settlers who had broken into Joseph Tomb, a shrine located in an area controlled by the Palestinian Authority. Increased Israeli incursions into the occupied West Bank have fueled violence, with around 200 Palestinians killed in 2023. The Israeli occupying forces are holding some 170 Palestinian minors in their prisons, where they are subjected to torture and cruel and degrading treatment. The Commission for Prisoners and Ex-Prisoners Affairs denounced it and pointed out that in the penitentiary centers of Ofer, Megido, and Damon, they lack all the minimum necessities of life and human integrity. The systematic violations committed against them in those prisons are unprecedented, as more than 3/4 of the imprisoned minors have been subjected to some type of physical attack and all suffer psychological torture. According to official figures, since the year 2000, more than 17,000 minors have been illegally detained. On Tuesday, Libyan authorities highlighted that the Special Deterrence Forces and the 444th Brigade reached an agreement to end the hostilities with the mediation of the Prime Minister of the Libyan Unity, Abdul Hamid Deibe. After heavy clashes that left at least 27 dead and 75 wounded, on Tuesday, in addition to the evacuation of civilians, the militias and the army unit agreed on a truce. In the meantime, local media also confirmed the delivery of the commander of the 444th Combat Brigade, Mahmoud Hamza, who had been detained on Monday by the Special Deterrence Forces. In the sense, the official statement assured Commander Mahmoud Hamza is in the custody of his own unit and all troops have returned to their barracks. As the Taliban government celebrates its second year since return to power, Afghan women around the world announced the launch of a campaign to demand the current ruler to restore the right to secondary and university education for girls and young women in the country. In the sense, United Nations on Wednesday called for guaranteed rights for women and girls in Afghanistan, where according to UN, the gap between the Taliban's promises and practices is widening. Since coming to power in Afghanistan 2 years ago, the Taliban have barred more than 1.1 million young Afghan women from access to secondary and university education. Many of them escaped to other nations to study and train. In all cases, the Afghan diaspora demands equal rights for women and girls back in their homeland to ensure their development and fulfillment. We have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website, telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our social medias on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.